as a steward, as a man of God, as a family man, as a husband, as a father, as someone who, for me, what I've come to find is the most important thing is my legacy. And so, what does legacy mean to you? That's the topic of tonight's conversation. Is what does legacy mean to you? So, legacy means a lot of things to different people. It has different meanings, different value. So, if you're watching now, please comment in the chat. Just say, let me know, what does legacy mean to you? If you're watching on the replay, let me know, what does legacy mean to you? For some people, legacy means the money that they leave behind, the assets they leave behind. So for some people, it's more than that. It's their values, it's their beliefs, it's the recipes in the cookbook, it's the experiences, traveling, the time spent in intimate moments at the dinner table. These are all different ways of leaving a legacy. And to each one of us, it means a different thing because we all have different values and beliefs. None of us are identical and the same. And no one's right or wrong as to what you believe legacy is. But I plan on taking you through a series of thoughts and questions here tonight to really help you to think about legacy. And again, this is the first session that we're having, and we're going to build on this session as we continue with this conversation about legacy. Now, don't forget, you can access my new masterclass, the course Legacy Generation System, at legacygenerationsystem.com. And if you're an agent out there and you're looking to become a part of a team that is helping people with honesty, integrity, and education, then check out kingdomfinanceteam.com and schedule a call for us to talk about you joining the team. If you're somebody watching this and you have questions about some of the topics that we're talking about, schedule a free consult, and I'm happy to spend time with you and just educate you on some of the solutions and really help you to get aligned with your own values and your beliefs, because that's what it comes down to. The most important thing is identifying what are your values, what are your beliefs, how are you living your life in relation to your values and beliefs, in your relationships, in your health, in your business, in your finances, and all these different ways. And if there's a gap between what you actually value and believe and what you're doing or how you're living your life, then how can you close that gap? What steps do you need to do? Sometimes, it's just becoming aware of it. Sometimes you have to take intentional action to close the gap. Sometimes you need help. You need a coach or certain tools that are going to help you to bridge that gap. So I'm happy to spend time with anyone who needs that support and help. So what does legacy mean to you? Please let me know in the chat. What does legacy mean to you? So now, as we continue with this conversation, again, I'm going to be transitioning into the next slide here. And this is a Bible verse, because this is what legacy means to me, because I agree with what the Bible says. The Bible says that a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, right? A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. And so, for me, legacy is what I leave behind for my children and for their children. It's the inheritance. And it's not just the financial, but it's my values, it's my beliefs, it's my faith, it's the systems that I'm going to put in place while I'm alive here on earth, so that they have a system and a methodology, a system to live by, where they are not trying to figure out how to do life, but I'm going to literally create a constitution for my family. And you can do the same thing. And creating that constitution with rules and laws on how your family conducts themselves, their code of ethics, how to borrow money, how to leverage money, how to build wealth, diet, nutrition, all of these things are things that you can create in your legacy, in your family constitution, and leave it as a legacy for your children and your children's children. So for me, that's what legacy means. I was watching a show yesterday. It was really interesting. It was a show about time travel, and it was a powerful statement that somebody made in the show. And that statement was that the future is more powerful than the past, and that is your legacy. Your future is more powerful than your past, and that is your legacy. Just think about that. Your future is more powerful than your past, and that is your legacy. Sadly, unfortunately, it's estimated that 70% of generational wealth doesn't make it past the second generation, and 90% disappears by the third generation. That is a very sad truth. Now, there's a reason it's like that it's like that. I'm going to explain that to you. And that is why I created this course, because the only way to change that trajectory is by having knowledge. The Bible says, "My people perish for the lack of knowledge." So, having the information is the first step. So, what I'm sharing with you right now is the hierarchy of financial needs. The hierarchy of financial needs is based off of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow was a 19th century historian that did research. He wasn't a historian, I'm sorry. He was a psychologist. A psychologist. And if you study psychology, you'll know who he is. He's probably first chapter of your first semester of university, of college. And Abraham Maslow did a study. He researched and interviewed people from all walks of life all around the planet and found that we all have the same basic human needs. And so New York Life Insurance Company hired a financial expert and a psychologist. They put their minds together and they took Maslow's hierarchy of human needs and translated it into this hierarchy of financial needs. And what we see here in this hierarchy of financial needs is at the very bottom, at the base of the financial needs pyramid, we have cash flow and basic needs. Cash flow and basic needs. So when we get out of high school, when we get out of college, before we earn any money and we have anything saved, our first priority, our very first priority is food, housing, transportation, and our daily expenses. So we seek to just earn enough income to cover those basic needs. Now, once we have those basic needs met, we then graduate to the next level, which is financial safety. This is where we're seeking to create an emergency fund, as well as to have our basic insurance, basic life insurance, basic health insurance, car insurance, or any other insurance that we need to protect ourselves. So basic financial safety is what we look for here at the next level. And that emergency fund is in this section of your financial safety. The next level up is accumulating wealth. This is where we start thinking about taking our money and investing it in assets and building wealth through investments. This is also where we start thinking of paying off debt strategically and being very aggressive to pay off debt, as well as starting to save money for retirement and getting ready for our retirement years. So that's our accumulating wealth phase. And then we graduate to financial freedom. Financial freedom is where we now start thinking about long-term care. We're thinking about later on when we're 80 years old, 90 years old, and if we're going to be, in bed or we're not able to care for ourselves, who's going to take care of us in those senior years, right? When we're not able to care for ourselves. We're also thinking about not just retirement and expenses, but savings and having money in retirement to be able to live life in freedom, right? Because we don't want to just be slaves in retirement to the expenses, but we want to be able to live our life in our retirement and have freedom to take vacations, pay for our grandkids' birthday parties or do the things that we want to do without being worried about running out of money and ultimately check off our bucket list, right? So that's financial freedom. And then finally, our highest level is our legacy. This is where, as business owners, we start thinking about succession planning, tax planning, and estate planning. Everybody should be thinking about that. Now, what's very interesting is we're not just on one of these levels. We're all a blend, a fusion of these different levels. We're all some more in one level than the other, but we're all a fusion of these levels. Now, the problem is the reason why that statistic that says that 70% of generational wealth is squandered by the second generation, and it's actually 90% is squandered by the third generation, is because what happens is people that are born into legacy, people that are born into situations where they have wealth that is given to them. Usually our parents or the parents, that first generation, worked really hard to build that wealth. So what do? We s- we we uh, we we give our kids everything and we don't make them earn it, right? We spoil them. That's what I'm trying to look for. We spoil our kids. And so in spoiling them, we think we're doing something good because we want them to have the life that we didn't have. That's what we say. But what we're actually doing is we're not teaching them the fundamentals that are required to sustain wealth. So that means instead of them having to go through the process of cash flow and basic needs at the bottom of that pyramid, and instead of them having to understand and save for financial safety, they're born into a world where they're in a accumulating wealth mind state or a financial freedom mind state. And that's really where their mind state is. Now, that's not a bad thing if you have a strong foundation. But if you don't have a strong foundation, then when you're in the accumulating wealth and financial freedom mind state, then you're going to take higher risks on investments and you're going to spend money without any without any discretion to enjoy yourself because you don't understand the value of cash flow and basic needs or financial safety. And so, therefore, our children that are born into first or second generation wealth without systems in place to teach them financial stewardship, to teach them how to handle and manage money, and to teach them the fundamentals. Unfortunately, they're squandering the wealth by the second and third generation. 90% of the wealth is squandered. And that's why. It's because their mind state is in accumulating wealth and financial freedom. So it's our responsibility for those of us who are building wealth in this generation right now. And that's why I call this program the legacy generation system, because you're generating the wealth for the legacy in this generation to leave it for the next generation. So the word generation has multiple meanings here. So this is your legacy generation system. If we work hard to build wealth and we don't put systems in place to allow that wealth to be protected in for the next generation, then it will be squandered. The chances are it will be squandered. And so it's our responsibility, and we can do that. We can protect our wealth from the next generation squandering our wealth.